Hey guys, tonight we're sailing into something brutal, legendary, and soaked in blood and myth. We're diving deep into the world of the Vikings. Forget the horned helmets and the romanticized warriors Hollywood sold you. The truth? You probably wouldn't survive a week in their world. So before we set sail, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 9th century Scandinavia. The good news? You're alive? The bad news? So are the lice, the cold, and the very real possibility that you'll die in a raid before winter comes. Your bed isn't a bed. It's a wooden platform covered with furs that smell like wet dog mixed with smoke, and something you pray isn't rot, but definitely is. There's no memory foam, no pillows in the modern sense. Just rolled up cloth, or more fur. Maybe a stuffed sack if you're lucky. The longhouse around you is dark. Smoke from last night's fire still hangs in the air because there's no chimney, just a hole in the roof that half works on a good day. Your eyes sting. Your throat feels like you've been breathing ash. Because you have been. The smell? It's a symphony. Unwashed bodies, dried fish hanging from the rafters, wet wool, animal hides being cured, and the earthy stench of the dirt floor mixed with whatever your neighbor's goat did last night. Scented candles haven't been invented. And even if they were, they'd just add another layer of smoke to this already suffocating atmosphere. You try to stretch, but immediately regret it. The air is freezing. It's always freezing. Even in summer, the mornings bite. Your joints ache. You're maybe 25 years old, which in Viking terms means you're approaching middle age. Your back cracks like a ship's mast in a storm. Getting out of bed is a gamble. The floor is either damp from condensation, muddy from last night's rain that leaked through the turf roof, or frozen solid if it's winter. Your bare feet are now part of the ecosystem, a system that includes fleas, lice, and the occasional mouse. Privacy? What's that? Your entire family is waking up around you. Parents, siblings, maybe a thrall or two, plus the livestock. Yes, the livestock. Cows, goats, sheep. They all share the longhouse with you during winter. It keeps everyone warm, sure, but it also means you're never truly alone, and you're definitely never truly clean. Welcome to Morning in the Viking Age, where you're never completely sure if that smell is you, the animals, or just life itself. So you've crawled out of your fur-covered platform. Now nature calls, and it's not calling politely, it's screaming. Here's where you start missing the modern bathroom. There's no toilet, no flush, no toilet paper, not even a door that closes properly. In the Viking Age, relieving yourself is an outdoor adventure, a test of will, and often a humiliating ordeal. If you're a farmer or a common person, your bathroom is a pit latrine behind the longhouse. It's basically a hole in the ground, sometimes covered with a wooden seat if you're fortunate. The smell is apocalyptic. You hold your breath, do your business, and pray to Odin that you don't slip. In winter, this becomes a special kind of torture. Imagine squatting over a frozen hole while the wind cuts through your clothes like a blade. Your exposed skin goes numb in seconds. Sometimes the pit freezes over and someone has to break the ice first. That someone might be you. Toilet paper? Never heard of it. Vikings used moss, leaves, smooth stones, or old rags. Sometimes just snow if it was winter. The concept of hygiene was flexible, which might explain why handshakes weren't popular yet. And if you're on a longship during a raid, congratulations. You get to hang your backside over the edge of the boat while it's moving. Try not to fall in. The sea is cold, and your crewmates won't stop rowing to fish you out mid-voyage. In towns, waste was often tossed into the street or into designated pits, Archaeological digs in Viking settlements have found layers upon layers of organic waste, creating a permanent archaeological record of everyone's bathroom habits. Future scholars will judge you. Whether you're a jarl or a thrall, Viking toileting is cold, public, and undignified. One slip on a wet plank, and you're face first in humanity's leftovers, and you still haven't eaten breakfast. But we'll get to that next. You survived the toilet. You deserve a reward, right? Maybe a nice warm meal? Something comforting? Sorry, this is the Viking Age. Nothing is comforting here. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is a grim affair. There's no coffee brewing, no eggs and bacon sizzling, no fresh bread warm from the oven. You sit near the smoky fire pit to a wooden bowl of something that looks like it was scraped off the bottom of a ship. Welcome to your morning porridge. It's made from barley, oats, or rye, boiled in water or milk if you're lucky. It's thick, gloopy, and tastes like wet grain mixed with disappointment. Sometimes there are berries thrown in, or honey if the gods smile on you. Most days it's just grain and regret. On the side, maybe a chunk of flatbread. Vikings didn't have yeast-risen loaves like we think of today. Their bread was dense, hard, and often made from coarse flour that included bits of grit from the grinding stones. You don't slice it. You gnaw it. What about drinks? You're not sipping orange juice. You're drinking ale. Yes, ale. At sunrise. Why? Because water can't always be trusted, especially in settlements where waste and drinking sources are dangerously close. So you start your day with weak beer, low alcohol, high survival rate. Want some meat or cheese? Dream on. That's for feasts and special occasions. Most Vikings don't eat meat regularly. It's saved for sacrifices, celebrations, or when you successfully raid a monastery. As for cheese, it exists, but it's hard, salty, and stored for months. It's barely recognizable as food. Fresh fruit? Only when it's in season. And don't even think about spices unless you're a jarl. A pinch of imported pepper costs more than your monthly labor. Salt is valuable enough to be hoarded. So you chew your gritty bread, gulp your morning ale, and try not to think about the fact that you'll be eating this exact meal again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Breakfast doesn't energize you. It just stops you from starving before the real work begins. And now that you're properly underfed, it's time to work like your life depends on it. Because it absolutely does. Now that you've choked down your sad Viking breakfast, it's time to get dressed. Not that it'll help much. Your wardrobe consists of exactly one outfit. One. It's a wool tunic or a linen undershirt that you've worn every single day for months, possibly years. There's no such thing as seasonal fashion in the Viking Age. There's just wear this until it disintegrates or until you die in it. Underwear? Optional. If you're lucky, maybe a linen undergarment. If not, you're going commando under layers of scratchy, sweaty wool, lovingly stitched together by someone who may or may not have known what a proper seam looked like. There's no washing machine, no soap that works particularly well, no dry cleaner. So your clothes are stained, stiff, and scented like a Viking longhouse, which is to say, smoky, fishy, and vaguely feral. Even if you wanted to wash your clothes, it's not easy. You'd have to haul water from a stream or, well, heat it over a fire, scrub your tunic with lye soap made from wood ash and animal fat, and then hang it to dry. In Scandinavia, where it rains more days than not, that's a gamble. Most people just don't bother. Shoes? If you own any, they're made of leather, barely stitched together, and offer about as much arch support as a wet leaf. Most people just wrap their feet in cloth and hope for the best. You're walking through mud, through animal waste, through Viking landmines of sharp rocks and frozen ground. And then there's the itch. Oh, the itch. Fleas, lice, and bedbugs live rent-free on your body. Everyone has them. Jarls, warriors, thralls, children. no one escapes. You'll be scratching your armpit with a wooden comb while talking to your neighbor, Bjorn, and no one will even blink. Your scalp is a battlefield. Your skin is raw from rubbing against wool. And if you develop a rash, too bad. There's no dermatologist, no ointment, no one to tell you it's probably scabies. You just keep on suffering. If you're a warrior, you might have a cloak fastened with a bronze brooch. It's practical, sure, but it's also a status symbol. The finer the brooch, the more respected you are. But underneath that cloak, same itchy, unwashed tunic as everyone else. Now that you're fully dressed in discomfort and wrapped in lice, it's time to head outside and start working yourself into an early grave. It's time to work. And in the Viking Age, work isn't a career. It's survival. If you're like most people, you're a farmer. Congratulations. That means you rise with the sun and stop only when it disappears behind the mountains. There's no weekend. There's no vacation. There's only the endless cycle of planting, tending, and harvesting. And if you fail, you starve. Your tools, a wooden plow, a sickle, a hoe, and whatever body parts still function. The soil is rocky, thin, and stubborn. You dig ditches, spread manure, pull weeds, and haul water until your spine begins to curve like a ship's keel. If you're a woman, surprise. You don't just do field work. You also raise children, cook every meal, spin wool, weave cloth, churn butter, brew ale, and manage the household. Oh, and you're expected to defend the farmstead if the men are off raiding. No pressure. Children start working around age 5 or 6. No school, no toys, just a tiny rake and the faint hope of not dying before adulthood. If you're not a farmer, maybe you're a blacksmith, a shipbuilder, or a craftsman. Great. You still work with fire, sharp tools, and toxic fumes in poorly ventilated workshops. The pay? Survival? The benefits? Occasionally not freezing to death, but here's the thing. If you're strong, ambitious, or desperate enough, there's another option. Raiding. Vikings didn't raid because they were inherently violent savages. They raided because Scandinavia was harsh, farmland was limited, and opportunities were scarce. Raiding was economic strategy mixed with adventure. It was dangerous, brutal, and often short. But if you survived, you came home with silver, weapons, slaves, and stories worth telling. So you grip your axe, ignore the blisters, and keep going. Because in the Viking Age, your job isn't a career. It's a test of endurance, and failing means vanishing into the cold Scandinavian dirt, forgotten. Let's talk about the weather. Because in the Viking Age, the weather isn't just an inconvenience. It's an ongoing punishment from the gods. Let's start with winter. There's no insulation, no central heating, no thermostat you can adjust. Your longhouse has wooden walls with gaps wide enough to see through. The windows, if they exist, are covered with oiled animal membranes, not glass. They let in a murky light but do nothing to stop the cold. The fire in the hearth is your only source of warmth, but you don't have enough firewood to keep it roaring all night. Wood is expensive. Gathering it from the forest takes time and energy you can't always spare. So you bundle up in every piece of wool and fur you own, huddle near the dying embers, and still wake up with frost on your breath. Your extremities are perpetually cold. Your fingers stiffen into claws. Your toes go numb. Frostbite isn't diagnosed. It's just called bad luck. If you lose a finger or toe to the cold, you keep working. There's no other choice. Now fast forward to summer. Sounds better, right? Wrong. In summer, your longhouse turns into a smoke-filled sauna. There's no fan, no breeze, and no escape. You sweat through your wool layers, but you can't remove them because modesty, sunburn, and insect bites are all real concerns. The flies come out in full force, drawn to your unwashed body, the drying fish, and the livestock living 3 feet away. Mosquitoes swarm at dusk, and you have no repellent except smoke, which just makes everything worse. In the fields, the sun bakes you. There's no sunblock, no hat unless you fashion one from straw. Heat stroke isn't a diagnosis. It's just called taking a bad turn. And if you collapse, you're expected to get up and keep working. And the rain. Oh, the rain. It falls constantly in Scandinavia, turning paths into mud rivers and making every task twice as hard. Your clothes never fully dry. Everything smells like wet wool and mildew. So whether you're shivering through winter or sweating through summer, one thing remains constant. Your clothes still itch. Your food is still terrible. And your work is still waiting. Welcome to Viking climate control. There is none. Feeling thirsty? Need to wash your face? Want a drink of clean water to refresh yourself? Too bad. In the Viking Age, water is trying to kill you. Let's start with drinking. That stream nearby looks fresh, doesn't it? Clear, cold, flowing straight from the mountains. But here's the thing. Upstream, someone just dumped their waste bucket. Or a dead animal is rotting in it. Or both. Parasites, bacteria, and diseases lurk in every sip. That's why Vikings drank ale and mead instead. The brewing process boiled the water, making it safer. Even children drank weak ale, not because Vikings were careless parents, but because it was the smartest option available. Wine existed, but it was expensive and imported. Only the wealthy could afford it. For everyone else, it was ale, ale, and more ale. Now let's talk about bathing. Surely Vikings washed themselves, right? Actually, yes. And this is where popular myth gets it wrong. Vikings were surprisingly clean by medieval standards. They bathed regularly, combed their hair, and even had grooming tools like tweezers and ear cleaners. Saturday was bath day, a tradition so strong that the Old Norse word for Saturday, laugardagur, literally means washing day. But bathing wasn't easy. You had to haul water, heat it over a fire, and fill a wooden tub. Public bathhouses existed in some settlements, but they were communal, steamy, and filled with gossip. The sauna tradition, borrowed from neighboring cultures, was also practiced. You'd sit in a hot, smoke-filled room, sweat out impurities, and then jump into a freezing river or roll in snow. Refreshing? Maybe. Survivable? Barely. Still, even with their grooming habits, Vikings weren't pristine. Daily grime, limited soap, and constant exposure to smoke and animals meant cleanliness was relative. And rainwater? Collected in barrels where birds perched, insects bred, and algae grew. Drinking it was a gamble. So whether it's going in your mouth, on your body, or into your crops, water in the Viking Age is a double-edged sword. One wrong gulp, and you're spending your final days clutching your stomach and praying to Odin for mercy. So you drank the water, or maybe you just stubbed your toe on a rock. Either way, you're sick or injured. You need help. You need a healer. Too bad you live in the Viking Age, where medicine is equal parts herbalism, superstition, and hoping the gods aren't too busy. Let's start with diagnosis. Everything wrong with you, whether it's a fever, a wound, or a mysterious rash, is caused by one of three things: bad luck, angry spirits, or the will of the gods. There's no germ theory, no understanding of infection. If you're sick, it's because you've displeased someone, somewhere. Treatment depends on who's available. If you're lucky, there's a vulva, a wise woman who knows herbs, chants, and rituals. She might give you a poultice made from yarrow, honey, and crushed garlic. Surprisingly, some of these remedies actually work. Honey is antibacterial, and certain herbs have genuine medicinal properties. But if your condition is serious, a broken bone, a deep wound, a high fever, you're in real trouble. Surgery exists, but it's crude. Imagine having a limb amputated with a hand axe and a leather strap to bite down on. No anesthesia, no sterilization, just pain and prayer. If you survive the procedure, infection is the next enemy. And infection, in a world without antibiotics, is often a death sentence. Wounds fester, fevers spike, and the healers can only watch and chant. Some injuries were treated with runes carved into wood or bone, believed to channel divine protection. Others were left to fate. If you recovered, the gods had spared you. If you died, it was your time. Dental care? Non-existent. Toothaches are treated by pulling the tooth out with pliers or letting it rot. Either way, you're in agony. Childbirth is particularly deadly. Women give birth at home, attended by midwives with experience but no medical training. Complications can kill both mother and child. It's one of the leading causes of death for Viking women. So yes, in the Viking Age, medicine is less about healing and more about surviving the cure. If you make it through, thank the gods. If you don't, well, Valhalla awaits. After a long day of labor, cold, and possibly leeches, it's finally time to eat. You shuffle back to the longhouse, stomach growling, ready for a hot meal. Bad news. Your meal is probably trying to kill you. Let's begin with the basics. Food preservation is limited. There's no refrigeration, no freezer, just salt, smoke, drying, and hope. Your meat, if you have any, has been hanging for days or weeks, cured in brine or smoke. It's tough, salty, and possibly inhabited by maggots, but you eat it anyway because protein is protein. Fish is a staple. Dried fish, smoked fish, salted fish. So much fish that the smell becomes part of your identity. Cod, herring, salmon. They're caught in massive quantities and preserved for the long winter. But if the preservation fails, you're eating rot and calling it dinner. Bread is made from barley, rye, or oats. It's dense, gritty, and often mixed with whatever's available to make it stretch. In bad years, that means bark, peas, or ground acorns. It's not delicious. It's fuel. Vegetables? Only what's in season. Cabbage, onions, leeks, turnips, and beans. Root vegetables store well, so you'll be eating a lot of turnips. Boiled, mashed, floating in stew. So many turnips. Dairy is another gamble. Fresh milk spoils quickly, but butter, cheese, and skyr, a yogurt-like product, last longer. They're sour, thick, and loaded with bacteria. But again, you eat them because options are limited. Fruit is a rare treat. Berries in summer. Apples in autumn. Most of it gets turned into mead or ale because fermentation is preservation. Spices? Forget it. Unless you're wealthy enough to trade with distant lands, your seasoning options are salt, wild herbs, and suffering. And here's the kicker. Food isn't just scarce. It's dangerous. Ergot, a fungus that grows on rye, causes hallucinations, convulsions, and death. Spoiled meat brings food poisoning. Bad preservation means starvation. Meals are eaten communally, gathered around the fire. It's loud, chaotic, and one of the few moments of social connection. You share stories, insults, and food from a common pot. It's not gourmet, but it's Viking. It's evening now. You've worked, suffered, and barely survived your meal. You might think the day is winding down, but don't relax yet. The gods are watching. In the Viking Age, religion isn't just part of life. It is life. Norse mythology shapes your worldview, your decisions, and your destiny. You live in a world where gods walk among mortals, where giants threaten the cosmic order, and where your fate was decided by 3 ancient women at the moment of your birth. Every day is structured around the divine. You wake and give thanks to the gods for another sunrise. You sacrifice to Thor before planting, to Freyr for a good harvest, to Odin for wisdom in battle. Religion isn't Sunday service. It's woven into every breath, every decision, every fear. The Norse pantheon is vast and violent. At the top is Odin, the All-Father, god of wisdom, war, and death. He's not a kind god. He's cunning, ruthless, and obsessed with knowledge. He sacrificed his own eye for wisdom and hung himself on Yggdrasil, the world tree, for 9 days to learn the secrets of the runes. Odin doesn't promise comfort. He promises power for those willing to pay the price. Then there's Thor, god of thunder and protector of humanity. He wields Mjolnir, his hammer, and battles giants to keep the world safe. Thor is the people's god, the one you pray to when storms threaten your crops, or when enemies approach your shores. He's strong, loyal, and short-tempered. Basically, the ideal Viking. Freyr and Freya, twin deities of fertility, love, and prosperity. Freyr ensures your fields grow and your livestock thrive. Freya, fierce and beautiful, presides over love, war, and death. She claims half of those who die in battle, taking them to her hall, Folkvanger. She's as much a warrior goddess as Odin. And then there's Loki, the trickster. Neither fully god nor fully giant, Loki is chaos incarnate. He's clever, dangerous, and destined to betray the gods at Ragnarok, the end of the world. Speaking of Ragnarok, it's the ultimate nightmare. A prophesied apocalypse where gods and giants will battle, the world will burn, and almost everyone will die. Even the gods aren't immortal. Odin will be swallowed by the wolf Fenrir. Thor will kill the serpent Jormungandr, but die from its poison. The world will sink into the sea. But here's the thing. After Ragnarok, the world will be reborn. A new earth will rise, green and fertile. Life will begin again. It's a cycle, not an ending. This belief shapes everything. Vikings don't fear death. They fear dying poorly, without honor, without a weapon in hand. Because how you die determines where you go. Die bravely in battle? You go to Valhalla, Odin's great hall, where you feast, fight, and prepare for Ragnarok. Die in your bed from sickness or old age? You go to Hell, a cold, shadowy realm ruled by Loki's daughter. It's not hell in the Christian sense. It's just less glorious. Sacrifices are common. Animals, valuable objects. Sometimes even humans are offered to the gods. At Uppsala, one of the most sacred sites, massive ceremonies involve hangings, drownings, and offerings thrown into sacred springs. Runes aren't just letters. They're magical symbols, each with its own power. Carving the right rune can protect you, curse an enemy, or communicate with the gods. Fate, or Wyrd, is inescapable. The Norns, 3 powerful beings, weave the threads of every life. You can't change your fate, but you can face it with courage. So as night falls, you whisper a prayer, maybe to Thor for protection, maybe to Freya for luck, maybe just to the fire, hoping it keeps the darkness at bay. Because in the Viking Age, the gods are real, fate is fixed, and the end of the world is always coming. If you thought being a Viking was hard, try being a Viking woman. All the cold, hunger, and violence, plus childbirth, societal restrictions, and the constant threat of being left behind while the men sail off to seek glory. But here's the thing. Viking women were tougher than most people realize. They weren't just passive homemakers. They were managers, merchants, warriors, and sometimes even rulers. Let's start with daily life. When the men left for raids or trading expeditions which could last months or even years, women ran everything. The farm, the household, the finances. They made decisions about crops, livestock, and trade. They supervised thralls and defended the homestead if enemies appeared. Viking women had property rights, which was almost unheard of in medieval Europe. They could inherit land, own businesses, and initiate divorce. If a marriage went sour, a woman could simply declare herself divorced in front of witnesses and walk away with her dowry and possessions. That kind of autonomy was revolutionary. Marriage was often arranged, sure, usually for political or economic alliances. But once married, a woman held significant power within the household. She wore the keys to the home's storage chests on her belt, a symbol of authority. Those keys meant she controlled food, wealth, and resources. Disrespect the woman with the keys, and you might find yourself locked out of the food supply. Some women went further. There are sagas and archaeological evidence suggesting that some women fought as warriors. The famous grave at Birka in Sweden contained a high-status warrior buried with weapons, tactical gaming pieces, and horses. For decades, it was assumed to be a man. DNA analysis revealed it was a woman. She wasn't alone. Shield maidens appear in sagas and legends. Women like Lagertha, a fierce warrior who fought alongside men and commanded respect on the battlefield. While some historians debate how common female warriors were, the evidence suggests they existed, even if they were rare. Then there were the vulvas, wise women who practiced satyr, a form of Norse magic. They were seers, healers, and spiritual guides. Even powerful men sought their counsel. A vulva could see the future, commune with spirits, and curse enemies. They held immense social power, but life for women was also brutal. Childbirth was a lottery. Many women died young, their bodies worn out from repeated pregnancies and hard labor. If you survived childbirth, you still faced the daily grind of cooking, weaving, brewing, and managing the household while your husband was gone. If you were unmarried or widowed, life was precarious. You were vulnerable to exploitation, though some widows became wealthy merchants or landowners in their own right. Viking society wasn't a feminist utopia, but it wasn't the oppressive nightmare of other medieval cultures either. Women had a voice, a role, and in some cases, real power. So when you picture a Viking, don't just see the man with the axe. See the woman holding the keys, managing the farm, raising warriors, and maybe, just maybe, sharpening her own blade. So far, you've battled cold, hunger, and disease. But just when you think your day can't get worse, here comes violence. Sudden, brutal, and often completely acceptable by Viking standards. Let's be clear. The Viking Age was not peaceful. Violence was everywhere. In the home, in the village, on the seas, and especially on foreign shores. Crime existed, of course. Theft, assault, murder. But justice wasn't handled by police or courts as we know them. It was personal. If someone wronged you, it was your responsibility, or your family's, to seek revenge or demand compensation. This system, called blood feud, could spiral out of control. Someone kills your brother. You kill their cousin. They burn your farm. You ambush their ship. It could go on for generations, entire families locked in cycles of revenge. To avoid endless violence, Vikings developed a complex system of weregild, or man price. If you killed someone, you could pay their family a set amount based on the victim's social status. A thrall was worth less than a freeman, who was worth less than a jarl. It wasn't justice in the modern sense, but it was a way to end feuds without total annihilation. If a crime was serious and couldn't be settled with gold, there was the Thing, a public assembly where disputes were judged. But even here, justice was rough. Punishments included outlawry, where you were declared outside the law's protection. Anyone could kill you without consequence. You were exiled, stripped of property, and left to survive alone. Most didn't. And then there's raiding. To the rest of Europe, Vikings were terrifying. They appeared without warning, struck with brutal efficiency, and vanished before anyone could retaliate. Monasteries were favorite targets, poorly defended, filled with treasure, and staffed by monks who couldn't fight back. But raiding wasn't mindless savagery. It was organized, strategic, and economically motivated. Vikings took silver, slaves, and anything valuable. They weren't conquering for land at first. They were getting rich. On the battlefield, Vikings were fearsome. They fought with axes, swords, spears, and shields. Battle wasn't glorious. It was chaos. Blood, screaming, mud, and the sickening sound of metal on bone. If you survived, you were a hero. If you didn't, your name might live on in a saga if you were lucky. Berserkers, elite warriors who fought in a trance-like fury, were particularly feared. They bit their shields, howled, and attacked with reckless abandon. Some say they used drugs or ritualistic practices to enter this state. Others say it was pure adrenaline and belief. Domestic violence was also present. While laws existed to protect women from excessive abuse, enforcement was inconsistent. A husband could discipline his wife, though if he went too far, her family could intervene, or she could divorce him. Violence wasn't just a breakdown of society, it was woven into the culture. Honor was everything. Insults could lead to duels. Disputes over land could lead to killings. Even poetry could be dangerous. A well-crafted insult in verse, A-N-I-D, could destroy a man's reputation and lead to bloodshed. So walk carefully. Keep your weapons close. And never ever insult a Viking's honor. Because in this world, words can kill just as surely as axes. At this point, you've made it through cold, lice, bad food, violence, and the constant judgment of the gods. But now comes the final chapter of every Viking life, death. If you're alive past 40, you're a rarity. Most people don't make it that far. Infant mortality is brutal. Nearly half of all children die before age 5, claimed by disease, malnutrition, or harsh winters. If you survive childhood, congratulations. Now you face a lifetime of hard labor, injuries, infections, and the ever-present risk of violence. By 30, your body is worn. By 40, you're considered old. For women, childbirth is one of the deadliest risks. No medical intervention, no sterile tools, no pain relief. Just midwives, prayers, and hope. Many women die in labor or from infections afterward. For men, the dangers are different, but equally lethal. Farming accidents, shipwrecks, battles, infections from minor wounds. All of these claim lives regularly. Even a small cut can become infected and kill you in a world without antibiotics. And then there's disease. Dysentery, tuberculosis, parasites, infections. They move through communities like invisible raiders. One bad winter, one contaminated well, and an entire village can be decimated. When death comes, your send-off depends on your status. If you're a great warrior or a wealthy jarl, you get a ship burial. Your body is placed in a ship along with weapons, tools, food, drink, and sometimes sacrificed slaves or animals. The ship is either buried under a mound or set aflame and pushed out to sea. It's a final voyage to the afterlife, and it's spectacular. If you're a commoner, your burial is simpler. A wooden coffin if you're lucky, a mound of earth, maybe a stone marker. Your family mourns, shares stories, and drinks in your honor. Cremation is also common. Your body is burned on a pyre, and your ashes are buried or scattered. It's believed that fire releases the spirit, sending it to the afterlife faster. But here's what makes Viking death unique. It's not seen as the end. It's a transition. If you died well, with honor, weapon in hand, you're bound for Valhalla, or Folkvanger. There, you'll feast, fight, and wait for Ragnarok, the final battle. If you died poorly, in bed from sickness or old age, you go to hell. It's not punishment exactly. It's just less glorious. A shadowy realm where you exist but don't truly live. Death isn't feared in Viking culture. It's inevitable. What matters is how you face it. Courage in the face of death earns you eternal glory. Cowardice earns you forgotten shame. Funerals are social events. The community gathers. Stories are told. Ale flows freely. Grief is expressed. But so is celebration. You lived, you fought, you loved. Now you journey on. So when your time comes, and it will come early by modern standards, you won't go quietly. You'll go with fire, or earth, or sea. Your name might be remembered in sagas, or you might fade into the mists of time, but either way, you faced the Viking Age and survived as long as the Norns allowed, and that, in itself, is an achievement worth honoring. To truly understand Vikings, you must understand their mythology, because their gods weren't distant, abstract beings. They were real, flawed, and deeply involved in the world. The Norse cosmos is divided into 9 realms, all connected by Yggdrasil, the world tree. This massive ash tree holds everything together, its roots and branches stretching through reality itself. At the top is Asgard, home of the Aesir gods. This is where Odin rules, where Thor defends, where the gods prepare for Ragnarok. Asgard is connected to Midgard, the realm of humans, by the Bifrost, a rainbow bridge guarded by Heimdall, the watchman god who can hear grass growing and see for hundreds of miles. Midgard, Middle-earth, is where you live. It's surrounded by a vast ocean where Jörmungandr, the world serpent, lies coiled. This serpent is so large it circles the entire world, biting its own tail. Below Midgard is Niflheim, the realm of ice and mist, and Muspelheim, the realm of fire. These primordial forces existed before creation, and from their meeting, the world was born. Then, there's Jotunheim, land of the giants. These aren't just big humans. They're elemental beings, forces of chaos and nature. The gods and giants are in constant conflict, a cosmic struggle between order and chaos. Alfheim is home to the light elves, beautiful and benevolent. Svartalfheim, or Nidavellir, is where the dwarves live, master craftsmen who forged Thor's hammer, Odin's spear, and countless other legendary items. Vanaheim is home to the Vanir, a different group of gods associated with fertility, prosperity, and nature. After a war, the Aesir and Vanir made peace and exchanged hostages, which is how Freyr and Freya came to live in Asgard. Finally, there's Helheim, ruled by Hel, Loki's daughter. This is where those who die of sickness or old age go. It's cold, dark, and quiet. Not torment, just absence. But the mythology isn't just geography. It's stories. And these stories shaped how Vikings saw the world. Take the creation myth. In the beginning, there was nothing but Ginnungagap, a void between fire and ice. When the heat from Muspelheim met the cold of Niflheim, the giant Ymir was born from the melting ice. From his body, the gods eventually created the world. His flesh became earth, his blood the seas, his bones the mountains, and his skull the sky. Humans were created from two trees. Odin and his brothers, Vili and Ve, found two logs on a beach and carved them into Ask and Embla, the first man and woman. Odin gave them breath, Vili gave them consciousness, and Ve gave them senses. From them, all humanity descended. The gods aren't perfect. Odin is wise but manipulative. Thor is strong but hot-headed. Loki is clever but treacherous. Freya is beautiful but fierce. They make mistakes, feel jealousy, fall in love, and face consequences. One of the most important myths involves Balder, the most beloved of the gods. He started having dreams of his own death, so his mother Frigg made every object in existence swear not to harm him. Every object except mistletoe, which she thought too small and harmless to matter. Loki, being Loki, discovered this. He fashioned a dart from mistletoe and tricked Balder's blind brother Höder into throwing it. Balder died, and his death set in motion the events leading to Ragnarok. The gods tried to bring him back. Hel agreed to release him if everything in the world wept for him. Everything did, except one giantess, who was actually Loki, in disguise. So, Balder remained in Helheim until after Ragnarök. This story illustrates a key theme. Fate is inescapable. Even gods can't change what's destined. The best you can do is face it with courage. And then there's Ragnarök itself, the doom of the gods. It begins with Fimbulwinter, 3 years of endless winter with no summer in between. Social order collapses. Brother fights brother. Morality dies. Then the signs appear. The wolves chasing the sun and moon finally catch them, plunging the world into darkness. Earthquakes shake the earth. Mountains crumble. Loki breaks free from his chains, where he'd been bound as punishment for causing Balder's death. The giants march from Jotunheim. Surtur, the fire giant, leads an army from Muspelheim. The dead rise from Helheim, sailing on a ship made from the fingernails of the dead, a ship called Naglfar. The final battle takes place on the plain of Vigrid. Odin faces the wolf Fenrir, who swallows him whole. Thor kills Jörmungandr, but dies from its venom. Freyr fights Surtur, but falls because he gave away his sword for love. Loki and Heimdall kill each other, Tyr and the Hound, Garmr, kill each other. The world burns. It sinks into the sea. Everything ends, but then it rises again, green and fertile. The surviving gods, Balder returned from hell, gather. Two humans, Lif and Lifthrasir, emerge from hiding. Life begins anew. This is the Viking worldview. Fate is inescapable. Death comes for everyone, even gods. But life is cyclical. Endings are also beginnings. And what matters is how you face the inevitable. Now let's talk about what Vikings are most famous for: raiding. Because while they were farmers, traders, and craftsmen, they were also some of the most feared warriors in medieval history. The Viking Age officially begins in 793 CE with the raid on Lindisfarne, a monastery on the coast of England. It was brutal, sudden, and terrifying. Monks were killed, treasures looted, and the survivors traumatized. Chronicles describe it as divine punishment, a scourge sent by God. But to the Vikings, it was opportunity. Monasteries were wealthy, poorly defended, and located on coasts or rivers, easy to reach by ship. They were perfect targets. From that point on, Viking raids intensified. They struck England, Ireland, Scotland, and Francia with increasing frequency. Their longships, shallow-drafted and incredibly fast, allowed them to navigate rivers deep into the interior. They'd appear without warning, strike, and vanish before defenses could be organized. But Vikings weren't just raiders. They were explorers, colonizers, and traders. They established settlements in places far from Scandinavia. In the west, they settled Iceland, discovering it around 870 CE. Within decades, it became a thriving Norse colony with its own government, the Althing, one of the world's oldest parliaments. From Iceland, they pushed further. Eric the Red, exiled for murder, discovered Greenland around 985 CE. He named it Greenland as marketing, hoping the name would attract settlers. It worked. Norse settlements lasted there for centuries. And then, around 1000 CE, Leif Erikson sailed even further west and reached North America, landing in what's now Newfoundland. They called it Vinland. They tried to settle, but conflicts with indigenous peoples and the sheer distance from home made it unsustainable. Still, Vikings reached America 500 years before Columbus. In the east, Swedish Vikings, called Varangians, traveled down Russian rivers, trading with the Byzantine Empire and the Arab world. They founded settlements that became the basis for Russian states: Kiev, Novgorod. These were influenced heavily by Norse culture. Some Vikings went all the way to Constantinople, serving as the elite Varangian Guard, the Byzantine Emperor's personal bodyguards. These were the best of the best, warriors so skilled and loyal they were trusted with the Emperor's life. In the north, Vikings settled the Faroe Islands, the Shetlands, the Orkneys, and parts of Scotland. In the south, they conquered parts of England, establishing the Danelaw, a region under Viking control. York became Jorvik, a thriving Viking city. They even attacked Paris multiple times, sailing up the Seine and besieging the city. Eventually, the Frankish king Charles the Simple made a deal. He gave the Viking leader Rollo land in northern France in exchange for protecting the coast from other Vikings. That land became Normandy, literally land of the Northmen. Rollo's descendants would later conquer England in 1066 under William the Conqueror. So Vikings didn't just raid, they reshaped Europe. Their DNA, culture, and influence spread across the continent and beyond. They founded cities, established trade routes, and left a legacy that endures to this day. Let's talk about the secret weapon of the Vikings: the longship. Without it, Viking expansion would have been impossible. The longship was a masterpiece of engineering. It was fast, flexible, and capable of navigating both open ocean and shallow rivers. It could sail across the North Sea and row up a river into the heart of a kingdom. Construction was an art. Shipbuilders used oak for the hull, pine for the mast. Planks were overlapped in a technique called clinker building, making the hull both strong and flexible. The ships could bend with the waves, absorbing impacts that would shatter other vessels. The longship was shallow drafted, meaning it didn't need much water depth. This allowed Vikings to beach their ships directly on shore, land troops quickly, and escape before defenders could react. No need for harbors or docks. They were also symmetrical, with a curved prow at both ends. This meant the ship could reverse direction instantly without turning around, a huge tactical advantage in tight waters. Propulsion was dual, a large square sail for open water and oars for rivers or calm conditions. A typical longship had 20 to 30 oars, with warriors rowing in shifts. It was exhausting work, but it gave Vikings unmatched mobility. Navigation was another skill entirely. Vikings didn't have compasses or detailed maps. They used the sun, stars, landmarks, and even birds to find their way. Some evidence suggests they used sunstones, crystals that could locate the sun even on cloudy days by detecting polarized light. Whether this is myth or reality is still debated. They also used mental maps passed down through generations. A skilled navigator could remember coastlines, currents, and hazards across thousands of miles. It was a form of knowledge that took a lifetime to master. The longship wasn't just practical, it was beautiful. The prow was often carved into the shape of a dragon or serpent, meant to intimidate enemies and ward off evil spirits. When approaching home, Vikings would remove the dragon head to avoid frightening the land spirits. Ships were so important that wealthy Vikings were buried in them. The ship was a symbol of journey, status, and transition. A ship burial meant your voyage wasn't over. It was just beginning. Without the longship, Vikings would have been farmers confined to Scandinavia. With it, they became legends. While raiding gets the headlines, Vikings were also traders. In fact, trade was just as important to Viking society as warfare, maybe more so. Vikings established trade routes that stretched from the Arctic to the Mediterranean, from the Atlantic to the Caspian Sea. They traded furs, amber, walrus ivory, slaves, weapons, and goods from across the known world. Birka in Sweden and Hedeby in Denmark were major trading centers. Ships from across Europe and beyond docked there. Markets buzzed with activity, merchants haggling, craftsmen selling, languages mixing. In the east, Swedish Vikings traveled down the Volga and Dnieper rivers, reaching the Abbasid Caliphate and the Byzantine Empire. There, they traded northern goods for silver, silk, spices, and glassware. Hordes of Arab silver coins have been found across Scandinavia, evidence of this vast trade network. Vikings used a silver-based economy. Coins, when available, were measured by weight, not face value. Silver arm rings, hack silver, broken pieces of jewelry and coins, all were weighed on portable scales. Your wealth was literally carried on your arm or around your neck. Slavery was a significant part of the economy. Thralls, slaves captured during raids or born into slavery, were bought and sold as property. They did the hardest labor, had no rights, and lived brutal lives. While some could eventually buy their freedom, most lived and died in bondage. But not all Vikings were raiders or warriors. Many were farmers who never left Scandinavia. Others were craftsmen, blacksmiths forging tools and weapons, jewelers creating intricate brooches, shipbuilders constructing longships, weavers producing cloth. Women managed trade, too. With men often away, women ran markets, negotiated deals, and controlled wealth. Some became wealthy merchants in their own right. Trade wasn't just economic, it was cultural exchange. Vikings brought back ideas, technologies, religions, and stories from every place they visited. This exchange enriched Scandinavian culture and connected the Viking world to the wider medieval world. So when you think of Vikings, don't just picture the raider with an axe. Picture the merchant with a scale, the shipbuilder with a hammer, the farmer with a plow. They were all Vikings, and together, they built an economy as impressive as their reputation for violence. Vikings didn't just live, they told stories. And those stories, written down centuries later as sagas, have preserved their world for us. The sagas are epic narratives, part history, part legend. They tell of heroes and villains, battles and betrayals, love and revenge. They're filled with larger-than-life characters who face impossible odds with courage and wit. Take the saga of Eric the Red. It tells how Eric, exiled from Iceland for murder, discovered Greenland and convinced settlers to follow him there. His son, Leif Erikson, went on to discover Vinland. The saga is adventure, family drama, and exploration all in one. Or the saga of the Volsungs, which tells the tragic story of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer. Sigurd kills the dragon Fafnir, claims a cursed hoard of gold, and falls in love with the shield maiden, Brynhildr. Betrayal, magic rings, and revenge follow. It's Norse Game of Thrones. Then there's Egil's saga, about Egil Skallagrimsson, a poet warrior who was as skilled with words as with weapons. He composed beautiful poetry and brutal violence in equal measure. One moment he's composing a praise poem to save his life. The next, he's killing enemies with his bare hands. The sagas weren't written during the Viking Age. They were composed in Iceland during the 12th and 13th centuries, long after the events they describe. But they preserve oral traditions, cultural values, and historical memories from the Viking Age. They show us what Vikings valued: courage, loyalty, cleverness, revenge, and honor. A hero might die, but if his story was told, he achieved immortality. The sagas also reveal the flaws. Heroes are stubborn, violent, and often doomed by fate. Women are strong, but often caught in cycles of male violence. Fate is inescapable, and tragedy is common. These weren't fairy tales. They were mirrors of Viking society, reflecting both its glory and its darkness. Today, the sagas are studied, translated, and loved worldwide. They've inspired countless books, films, and shows. They keep the Viking Age alive, not as history, but as living story. All things end, even the Viking Age. By the late 11th century, the world was changing. The Vikings were changing. The fierce raiders who once terrorized Europe were becoming something else: Christians, kings, and settlers. Christianity spread through Scandinavia slowly, but inevitably. Kings saw the political advantages of converting. Christian kingdoms in Europe were less likely to attack fellow Christians. Trade improved. Alliances formed. Harald Bluetooth of Denmark converted around 965 CE and began Christianizing his kingdom. Olaf Tryggvason of Norway followed, sometimes through force, destroying pagan temples and pressuring his people to convert. Olaf II, later Saint Olaf, continued this work. In Sweden, the process was slower and more violent. Paganism held on longer there, but eventually, Christianity won. With Christianity came changes. The old gods faded. Temples became churches. Pagan rituals were replaced with Christian ones. The warrior culture that glorified dying in battle began to shift toward more feudal Christian values. Centralized kingdoms emerged. Harald Fairhair unified Norway. Sinuth the Great ruled an empire that included Denmark, Norway, and England. Sweyn Forkbeard and his descendants became kings of England. The Vikings stopped being outsiders and became part of the European system. They built stone churches instead of wooden temples. They wrote laws instead of relying solely on oral tradition. They became medieval kingdoms, not Viking war bands. The last major Viking invasion was Harald Hardrada's failed attempt to conquer England in 1066. He was killed at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, just days before William the Conqueror, himself a descendant of Vikings, won at Hastings and took the English throne. That moment, 1066, is often marked as the end of the Viking Age. But really, the Vikings didn't disappear. They transformed. Their descendants became Normans, Russ, English, Irish, and more. Their DNA and culture spread across Europe and beyond. The raids stopped not because Vikings became weak, but because they became integrated. They settled, converted, and adapted. The age of Vikings ended, but their legacy continued. So what did the Vikings leave behind? More than you might think. First, their reach. Vikings weren't just Scandinavian. Their influence stretched across Europe, into Russia, to North America, and through the Mediterranean. They connected distant parts of the world through trade, warfare, and settlement. The English language is filled with Old Norse words, hundreds of them. Sky, knife, husband, window, ugly. They're all Viking. Even the days of the week are partially Norse. Tuesday is Tyr's Day. Wednesday is Odin's or Woden's Day. Thursday is Thor's Day. Friday is Frigg's or Freya's Day. Place names across England and beyond reveal Viking settlement. Any place ending in by, meaning village, thorp, meaning farm, or kirk, meaning church, has Norse origins. Grimsby, Scunthorpe, Reykjavik, all Viking. Politically, Vikings shaped nations. Normandy was founded by Vikings. The Normans went on to conquer England, southern Italy, and Sicily. The Rus founded states that became Russia and Ukraine. Iceland's Althing is one of the world's oldest parliaments, a Viking invention. Culturally, Vikings gave us myths that endure. Norse mythology has inspired countless works of art, literature, and film. Thor, Odin, Loki, Ragnarok. These aren't just ancient stories. They're living in modern pop culture, from Marvel movies to fantasy novels. The Viking image has been romanticized, sure. Horned helmets, which they never wore, became iconic symbols. The fierce, fearless warrior became an archetype. But beneath the myth is real history, complex, brutal, and fascinating. Archaeologically, Vikings left behind treasures, ship burials, hoards of silver, intricate jewelry, runestones. These discoveries continue to reveal new details about their lives, beliefs, and achievements. Genetically, Viking DNA spread far and wide. Studies show Scandinavian ancestry across Europe, especially in Britain, Ireland, Iceland, and Russia. Millions of people today carry Viking genes, a biological legacy of conquest, trade, and settlement. But perhaps their greatest legacy is the spirit, the Viking ethos. Face your fate with courage, explore the unknown, value honor and loyalty. These ideas resonate across cultures and centuries. Vikings weren't perfect. They were violent, enslaved people and caused immense suffering. But they were also explorers, traders, poets, and survivors. They lived in one of the harshest environments on Earth, and not only survived, but thrived, leaving a mark on history that still echoes today. So, what have we learned tonight? That Vikings were brutal? Yes. That they were brave? Absolutely. That they lived in a world so harsh, so cold, so unforgiving that simply surviving was an act of defiance. Without question. You've woken up in their world. You've frozen in their winters, sweated through their summers, eaten their grim meals, and faced their violent realities. You've met their gods, sailed their ships, and heard their stories. And here's the thing. They were human, flawed, fierce, and deeply complicated. They weren't cartoon villains or flawless heroes. They were people trying to survive, thrive, and leave something behind. They lived short, hard lives in a world that offered no guarantees, but they faced it with courage. They told stories that outlasted their bones. They built ships that crossed oceans. They created myths that still inspire us. The Viking Age ended over 1,000 years ago, but the Vikings themselves, they never truly left. They're in our language, our place names, our stories, and our blood. They're in the spirit of exploration, the value of courage, and the refusal to be forgotten. So tonight, when you slip into your warm bed with heating, medicine, and safety, maybe think about them. The farmers who became legends, the warriors who became myths, the people who faced the harshest world imaginable and said, "We will not only survive, we will be remembered." And they were right. The Vikings may be gone, but their fire still burns. In every story told, every ship sailed, every boundary pushed. They live on, not in Valhalla, but in us, Skull.